people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
To the mother relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this here at year's end. We get a look at the current state at super flyweight, the women's super flyweight division, where there's been a lot of movement the last calendar year. Titles have been changing hands. We know that Argentina's Clara Lescurat, unbeaten Clara Lescurat, she became WBA champion way back when in June of this year. WBC champion Ashley Gonzalez Macias, she became WBC champion very recently in October. She's set to have a rematch with then champion Lourdes Juarez 2 weeks from now on the 16th. And we'll see if that title doesn't end up changing hands one more time before this year is out. Lourdes can't win it back. Lourdes Juarez, the younger sister of Bobby Juarez, former WBC super flyweight champion who lost the title to Ashley earlier this year in October. And as stated, we'll see if the title doesn't end up changing hands one more time before this year is out. More recently, the beginning of this month, just a day or so ago, Japan's own Mizuki Hirita. For those not aware, Tamao Ozawa, the then reigning WBO champion, decided to call it a career after achieving her career-long goal of becoming a champion in the sport of boxing. World champion. After having done that, she decided to retire from the sport of boxing to focus on her family. Congratulations to her for retiring on her own terms, but as a result of that, the WBO title went vacant, and it was recently contested between Mizuki Hirita and Kanako Tanayama. It was at the beginning of this month on the 1st, not but a day or so ago, and Mizuki won the fight. Mizuki is now the super flyweight division's newly crowned WBO champion. After just 4 professional contests, 4 professional bouts, she is the least experienced champion of the 4 reigning champions in today's women's super flyweight division, with the longest reigning champion being Maciela Lujan, Argentina's own Maciela Lujan, reigning IBF champion as of January last year. And you know, the women's super flyweight division don't get the same coverage that, say, the women's minimum weight division gets, or the women's light flyweight division, the bantamweight division, or the super bantamweight division, the super featherweight division. Featherweight. It's mostly because in this division, unlike those divisions, there's not a major promotional outfit that has a major broadcast partner. There's not a major promotional outfit with ponies in this super flyweight show. Thus, it doesn't get the same coverage that those other divisions get, like minimum weight, where Senicia Estrada and Yokasta both campaign. Both are with well-to-do promotional outfits. You know, Senicia's with Top Rank, Yokasta's with Golden Boy. Upstairs at light flyweight, Kim Clavel is with Yvonne Michelle, Gym Promotions. One division north of light flyweight, unified champion Marlena Esparza, flyweight, she's with Golden Boy, as is her Golden Boy promotion stablemate, Mexico's own Arely Mucino, just saw herself become a champion. IBF champion. You more or less see what I mean. When a major promotional outfit has a priced stallion at a given weight, the division benefits for it. But at super flyweight, unfortunately, that's not the case. Super flyweight is a division that still remains divided. There are no unification matches happening. And even if titles are changing hands and have been changing hands quite a bit the last calendar year, the division itself does not have a star. It does not have a face. Thus, most of its fighters and most of its champions campaigning at this weight are flying largely under the radar. Even with the renaissance of women's boxing the last couple of years, it's still a division that needs attention, needs coverage. It's a division that needs a shot in the arm. One fighter that I'm very hopeful about is East LA's own Adelaida Ruiz. Unbeaten Adelaida Ruiz, who sports a professional record of 12 wins, no losses with 1 draw, 6 knockouts. WBC interim champion, hard puncher,
and a fan-friendly fighter. Depending on what happens in the Lourdes Juarez versus Ashley Macias rematch set to go down later on next month, I could see the WBC ordering a fight between Adelaida and the winner of that fight. If the winner of that fight is Ashley, if the winner of that fight is Lourdes, I'm not so sure the fight between Lourdes and Adelaida happens.
But if Ashley wins again and she beats Lourdes again, I could see the WBC ordering a fight between Ashley and Adelaida.
Adelaida Ruiz, a characteristically aggressive fighter and a heavy-handed puncher, a TV-friendly kind of fighter that could become the face of this weight class, could become the face of this division. I'm very hopeful about this fighter.
She's promoted by Marv Nation, who co-promotes unified two-division champion Yo Costa Valle.
It's the same Marv Nation that staged last weekend's Regis Pregarius versus Chong Cepada super lightweight title fight.
Hopefully, with a little bit of elbow grease, the people at Marv Nation can make something happen for Adelaida.
We'll see what the coming year brings here at this year's end. This is the current state in the women's super flyweight division.
My brother Kondo, LDBC or nothing. He said that's why Tia female. Oh no, we ain't doing that, bro. We why you do that, bro? I'm not doing it. I can't do it, Kondo. I almost did it. I don't know why you lead me down that road, brother. Can't do that. I told y'all about that, man. So don't be talking about them people's family, man.
He talked about damn motherfucking family. His family, he sat up there. He talked about damn and his motherfucking daddy. So his crackhead ass daddy ain't off limits. That little kangaroo neck ass bitch he got ain't off limits, and that damn baby ain't off limits.
Cece, no, for the me, don't do that. Don't do that. That's enough. That's enough. That's enough. Cece, that's enough.
Join my IG. I got you to do.
Not all content creators in the YTBC are created equal. Content creators themselves know that better than most. What actually passes for content and outright garbage, the line that separates news and clickbait, has delineated over time because there are content creators who quite regularly go left field on what are supposed to be boxing podcasts discussing the sport of boxing when what ends up getting discussed is anything but. My previous video, we talked about how poorly it reflects on Bill and Devin, Bill mostly, that Bill is rubbing elbows with people that would go as far as taking shots at a child.
We've covered that angle of the story.
And the adverse reaction it's getting in the boxing community on the ground level, and even some fighters. Teofimo Lopez himself took notice of what was being said about him and his child.
He chose to be more diplomatic. Even Gervonta Davis himself had to face palm.
Because this is what happens when content creators get carried away. Content creators who are little more than overzealous fans with very limited intellects.
I said it in my previous video.
The moment you start talking about the fighters' kids, that's the moment that stops being about boxing.
The conversation. And as stated in my previous video, these kinds of left field antics are not an isolated incident in the YTBC where content creators, at least some, regularly.
There are content creators out there that will quite regularly misappropriate what are taboo subjects and inject them in places where they don't belong in order to boost their own metrics, essentially
for monetization purposes.
Sensationalized stories with sensationalized headlines, in some instances often fabricating information, completely fabricating and manufacturing stories that have no basis in reality via sources that cannot be verified.
And that's what has helped to delineate the line that separates actual content from outright garbage and clickbait. That's helped to delineate that line over time.
To where at least some individuals start to feel comfortable enough that they can take shots at a fighter's child. I mean, I don't know what this woman thought she sounded like saying this stuff.
But to the rest of the world, she sounded like an outright fucking scumbag.
She's not alone, though. This is not an isolated incident. What passes for content in some circles really is just outright garbage, hate speech.
This phenomena of toxicity within the YTBC is a mostly American phenomena.
Mostly. You've got boxing content creators from the United Kingdom, boxing content creators south of the border, Mexico, Central America, those regions, and you don't see this stuff in those circles.
Got Australian boxing content creators too.
I've never seen one of them have a go at a child, and I never see them go left field with what's supposed to be a boxing conversation television, I never see those content creators go left field the way some American content creators go left field when what they're supposed to be talking about is boxing.
There are a lot of American content creators that are supposed to be making boxing content that end up talking about anything but boxing.
It needs to be said, and this is just the latest chapter in that book.
I don't often spend a lot of time on the candor of other content creators in the YTBC, but when it gets to a point to where Gervonta Davis is face-palming, something needs to be said.
When I find myself agreeing with Gervonta Davis, who I normally give a lot of heat, yeah, something must be wrong. Something's going on.
Some things are off limits, but some content creators don't understand that because they're little more than overzealous fans.
And it just so happens that a lot of these content creators that regularly go left field,
They don't actually cover the entire sport, the sport's entirety. You know, they just cover the glamour weights, same couple of names, do the metrics.
monetization purposes, and ignorance.
Couldn't cover the whole sport in its entirety if they wanted to because they don't watch it.
And that's more or less how we end up here. I'm not going to tell you that the WBC title and the Ring Magazine belt at Super Flyweight will be up for grabs this weekend when Chocolatito faces Juan Francisco Estrada for the third time. They're not going to tell you that before this year is out, two other Super Flyweight champions in Kazuto Ioka and Joshua Franco, they're going to be locking horns. I mean, you won't hear about that from them.
What you will hear about, however, is Teofimo Lopez's wife and child.
And this is supposed to be a boxing podcast.
So what are you, reporters?
What are you, journalists? Who are you supposed to be, Sporty Laws?
The truth is that the same thing that makes social media a great tool to acquire knowledge is the same thing that makes it a breeding ground for ignorant idiots. Gives everybody a platform.
Platform to spout their nonsense, their hate speech, their overall toxicity, and their ignorance, lacking the common decency to know that kids generally, they're off limits. No matter how much you can't stand a fighter or his father, you don't go after his kids.
You know, that's the thing about social media.
The saving grace, however, is that in spite of how many subscribers or how many views,
Metrics.
content creators like these content creators, in spite of that, irrespective of the metrics they get on a free platform like YouTube, they don't actually represent a sizable portion of the boxing community, the paying public.
Not even an accurate depiction of the boxing community because the whole boxing community don't watch all the boxing content on YouTube. The whole boxing community probably isn't even on Twitter or Facebook for that matter. They're scattered around.
Hell, some of these content creators have more subscribers than Deontay Wilder sold pay-per-views in his last fight. Case in point.
It's a gross display of an overall lack of common decency.
Saving grace is who really gets their boxing news from these schmucks anyway. Finally, in men's lightweight news, ahead of his upcoming showdown with Gervonta Davis, Hector Garcia's trainer says Hector is an Olympian, a champion. Ryan Garcia hasn't accomplished either, raising a very valid point that, by all accounts, at least on paper, Hector Garcia is a more accomplished fighter than Ryan, but he's not viewed as a threat to Gervonta the same way that Ryan is. No disrespect to Ryan Garcia. Santos told BoxingScene.com, I think he's a tremendous talent, and I love his style. Everything about him. Not one bad thing to say about him. That said, the reality of it is, if you're looking at just the accomplishments in the ring, Hector was an Olympian and is a world champion. Ryan Garcia hasn't accomplished either of those things. Hector Luis Garcia, 16-0 with 10 KOs, 3 no contests, represented his native Dominican Republic at the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio de Janeiro. The 29-year-old southpaw won the WBA super featherweight title in his most recent fight, a 12-round unanimous decision victory over Venezuela's Roger Gutierrez.
On August 20th at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida.
Why isn't Hector Garcia viewed as a credible threat to Gervonta the same way that Ryan Garcia is viewed as a credible threat?
Why not?
If you're just looking at accomplishments, Santos said, without looking at Gatorade commercials, and I'm not saying he's not a tremendous talent, and him and Tank wouldn't be a tremendous fight, but if you're just going to look at accomplishments inside the ring, this guy is an Olympian and a world champion, so as far as accomplishments in the ring, by far, he has accomplished more in his career as of this moment than what Ryan Garcia has accomplished, and that's just a fact. Baltimore's Davis will likely be a decisive favorite versus Hector Luis Garcia once odds are revealed for their 12-round, 135-pound championship match at Capital One Arena in Washington, DC. I don't see very many, if anyone, referring to Hector Garcia as opposed to Ryan. I don't see them referring to Hector as a potential banana skin for Gervonta Davis. Even though he was a banana skin for Chris Colbert, let's be honest, the promotion was behind Chris Colbert, Lil B-Hop, more than it was behind Hector Garcia, by all accounts.
Come on. They weren't promoting Hector the same way they were promoting Chris Colbert.
I believe that Chris was the betting favorite going into that fight, and Hector Garcia upset the apple cart for him. So why don't people think he can upset the apple cart?
Can he upset Gervonta Davis?
If you look at Ryan Garcia's record, Santos said, can you say he's fought anybody equal to Chris Colbert? You could say Campbell, but I know damn well that Campbell would never beat Chris Colbert in a fight. And look, I'm not sure about that. Luke Campbell was a very big lightweight, whereas Chris Colbert was battered down there at super featherweight.
By a naturally smaller man at super featherweight, and Chris Colbert himself is a naturally smaller man. He's not big for 130 pounds, whereas Luke was huge for 135.
I think the main reason people don't view Hector as a potential banana skin for Gervonta is because they wouldn't have made the fight with Hector en route to the fight with Ryan if they identified Hector as a credible threat, if they viewed him as a potential banana skin. One fight's commercial value,
one fight's value so obviously dwarfs the other.
Thus, they would not jeopardize one fight with the other if they viewed Hector as a credible threat to Gervonta Davis. Even if he is a more accomplished fighter, a more accomplished amateur, and a more accomplished professional than Ryan, that doesn't necessarily make him the same threat as Ryan, because Ryan is taller than Hector, and Gervonta, noticeably faster, likely punches harder.
Harder than Hector, at least.
And remember that Hector Garcia's campaigning at super featherweight. He's moving up to lightweight for this fight, whereas Ryan, statuesque as he is, he's supposed to be moving down for the Davis fight, not up.
Styles, after all, they do make fights. Comparatively, Hector is a mid-range to inside guy. Good jab, good power, at least at super featherweight, but he's a mid-range to inside guy. I don't think he plans on fighting Gervonta Davis from the outside.
At least that's not what we've seen from him so far. He's not an outside fighter, not an outside jabber.
And even if that were his plan...
If it were, he's not as tall as Ryan, not as long, not as fast, doesn't punch as hard, so implementing a strategy like that could prove difficult. That's not saying that Hector isn't a good fighter. He is a good fighter, a good super featherweight. But you're fighting Gervonta up there at lightweight.
To beat him, he's got to box him.
Irrespective of a retrospect between Ryan and Hector, if Hector is to stand any chance at all, he's got to minimize Gervonta Davis's countering opportunities by being economic, by being judicious, and defensively responsible. Don't give this guy much to counter, because if you do...
Gervonta Davis is a counterpuncher. He's waiting to hit you with shots that you don't see.
Whether you're shooting a lazy jab or you're overcommitting to the backhand, that's what he's waiting for. He's waiting for you to make a mistake.
You have to be astute enough to make sure that that don't happen.
From what I've seen, Hector's no pure boxer.
Yeah, he's more boxer-puncher than pure boxer.
But I don't know. Maybe he'll surprise us.
Shock the world.